The views, information, and opinions expressed during the following program are solely those of the individuals involved and do not necessarily represent the views of Access Communications, its representatives, or its employees.
Okay, good evening everyone, and I would like to call this regular council meeting of September 9th to order. And this evening we have the privilege of having our minister, MLA, Laurie Carr, who used to serve in these chambers but has since gone way up there and is doing a great job for our provincial, for all of us that live here in the province. So please go ahead, Minister Carr, and thank you again for coming.
Great. Thank you guys so much for having me here this evening and getting the opportunity to share some of the success stories that have been happening. And then obviously at the end of my remarks, we'll open it up for some discussion. So since the Saskatchewan Party had the opportunity to form government in 2017, it has focused on the priorities that matter to Saskatchewan families, including making record investments in our province's highways, schools, and hospitals. As we gather here today, our students are just getting back into their classrooms. On June 14th, 2024, the Government Trustee Bargaining Committee and the Saskatchewan Teachers Federation agreed to binding arbitration, which will provide predictability in the lives of students, families, and teachers, while allowing for a path to the finalization of a new provincial collective agreement. Outside of bargaining process, we have signed a multi-year agreement with the 27 school divisions guaranteeing a minimum of $356.6 million in classroom supports each year for the next 4 years. This partnership formalizes a commitment to ongoing collaboration between government and school divisions to support students across the province and establishes a new pathway to long-term and sustainable funding for the sector. The Government of Saskatchewan remains committed to working with education stakeholders in addressing important issues like violence in the classroom and classroom composition, as shown in the new specialized support classrooms and the Teacher Innovation and Support Fund pilot projects. In 24-25, the provincial education budget included a record $2.2 billion in funding for school operations for the 24-25 school year, a record increase of $180 million, or 8.8%. This is the largest ever increase in school operating funding in the history of Saskatchewan. Also included in the 24-25 budget is the $354.6 million for classroom supports, as I referenced earlier, an increase of $46.5 million, or 14.7% over the previous year, and is part of the multi-year funding agreement with all 27 school divisions. And I would note that since 2007, there have been 101 major school infrastructure projects, 69 new or replacement schools, as well as 32 major renovations. Healthcare is also top of mind for everyone. I don't believe there is any person here that this does not affect, whether it be you personally or with your family. And Rebecca can speak to that personally, I'm quite sure. If no one's had the opportunity to listen to her story, thank you for sharing, because it really does open a lot of eyes that we do need to be our own best advocate when we think that something is wrong with us. So I'm not sure how many of you have heard about the Health Human Resource Action Plan, but this is a very ambitious and targeted plan which accelerates the efforts through recruitment, training, incentives, and retention. The plan was officially rolled out in September of 2022 and has been showing successes. As part of the recruitment piece, we have been actively recruiting internationally educated healthcare workers from overseas, primarily with the Philippines, as well as working with Ukrainian newcomers interested to work in the health sector. So far, we have 373 internationally educated health professionals from the Philippines who have arrived in Saskatchewan, with 290 now working in communities across the province. As part of the training side, we have expanded training seats locally, as well as streamlined and accelerated training, assessment, and licensing pathways for internationally educated nurses. So far, 1,279 nursing graduates from Saskatchewan and out of province have been hired since December 2022, which includes 182 since April 2024. We also believe that nurse practitioners have a role to play in Saskatchewan. Since June of 2024, 7 full-time nurse practitioners have been hired across the province. There is currently 1 position available in Estevan, and we're still waiting for that position to be filled. With all of the efforts that are being put forward on the Health Human Resource Action Plan, we are seeing successes with a decrease in wait times for surgeries. We know this because this is the first time since 2020 Saskatchewan surgical wait times have fallen below the 2007 and 2010 benchmarks in all long waiting categories. So as you can see, there's still more work to be done, but progress is being made. Many of you are aware that we will be getting a new MRI service here in Estevan. This is very important for our region. It will mean that individuals will no longer have to travel long distances for their services, which in turn mean cost savings in travel and time for people. Not just the time it takes to travel, but the time you actually have to wait for that service. I would like to acknowledge the generous donation of Elaine Wacom of $2 million, which kick-started this campaign. And I see that the foundation is already just over $4 million of their $6.5 million goal, and I have no doubt that they're going to reach that. Emmanuel Health is the organization that is spearheading this project. They will be making renovations to the existing hospital to ensure services can be provided in the best way for both patients and staff, while ensuring integrity and quality of the equipment being installed and operated. Once the services have been set up, the Government of Saskatchewan will take over the operational costs ongoing for this unit. Emmanuel Health and St. Joseph's Hospital have been great partners to work with on this project. And we continue to move forward with the planning of the new regional nursing home. We're just at the stage where the item will be brought forward to Cabinet and given some more specific options suggested by SAS Builds and Procurement, including what was heard from the local committee. Once that approval on specific happens, we will move on to the detailed design phase. And of course, after that comes construction. Having the privilege to serve as the Minister of Highways, I'm pleased to see that the work that has happened in our area over the years. Most recently, we have announced the Highway 18 west of Estevan will be resurfaced next spring. Crush work for gravel will be completed this fall, and the resurfacing will happen next year. I know that there is still more work to be done in the area, and I will continue to advocate for those to be completed. Lastly, I'll touch on power production in the Estevan region. As we are fully aware, the current federal government has put rules and regulations in place that make life very difficult for our local coal-fired generation. When Premier Moe was here last year, he said that if it is still viable after 2023 to burn coal, then that's what we will do. He also noted that leaving useful assets stranded is not what is best for anyone. In the meantime, our government is planning the future with the possibility of small modular reactors. This is a very long and arduous process with the federal government. SAS Power has been out consulting with communities and individuals, work that's needed to be done before they could choose a preferred location for the first SMR. And they have made Estevan the first preferred location. There is still more work to be done, more approvals from the federal government before a final decision is made on moving forward with this technology. But what we do know is if it does move forward, Estevan will be the first location. So with that, I'll just close my remarks and I will open it up for any questions because I'm sure there are more topics than that we can discuss.
Okay, thank you, Minister Carr. Any questions from members of council? We'll start with Councillor Walliser, then Councillor Clark.
Thank you, Your Worship. Minister Carr, interested in an update on what the province is able to do as far as support for returning obstetrical services to Estevan.
Great, thank you very much for that, and I really appreciate the question, having a young daughter who has children that are 5, 3, and 1. She's lived through not having obstetrics here, so I understand that. We really do need to focus on, when we're doing that recruiting, as a province, to really do a better job of finding professionals that maybe have those qualifications and informing them on how they can get licensed within our facilities here to ensure that the services can be reopened. I know that I have been talking with Candace Kopek from the hospital, and this is something that's #1 priority for her, is to get these services reopened. So we did have a conversation just as early as last week about how we ensure that when we're hiring the new doctors that come here, that they know what all is available for them, and most importantly, ensuring that if they are a SIPA doctor, which is a doctor that comes from a foreign country, that we know how to bridge their education to ensure that when they come to Estevan, that they can actually start doing those services when they get here. So actively working on that right now.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Okay, thank you, Councillor Williams. Councillor Clark.
Thank you. Thanks for coming, Minister Carr. Mine's more of a hypothetical one. If there is a federal election triggered, does it affect your election and our election if it came at the same time? Or has it happened before? I'm not sure.
Yeah, it actually did happen back in 2016 when I was first elected. I got elected in April. That election was originally scheduled for the October previous, but because the federal election was called within a certain time frame, the provincial government had to move their election to a later date. Now, I haven't had a conversation with my colleagues yet. We do have a cabinet meeting on Thursday, so I'm sure that topic will come up. We're only about 7 weeks out from our provincial election, so I don't know what the timing would be and if that would be affected just as of yet. I know that in 2016 there was quite a long runway when they picked their date, so we had time to actually move it. So I don't really have an answer for you. It all depends on when the federal government calls the election and how many weeks we need to be able to successfully have an election before theirs. And of course, you guys have your elections right after us, 3 weeks after us, so that would be a lot of voting in a 2-week span or a 2-month span.
Yeah, absolutely. Okay, Councillor Vroba.
Thank you, Your Worship, and thank you, Minister Carr, for coming. My question is regarding housing. There seems to be quite a few housing units in Estevan that are vacant. If you just drive by some of the ones that are on Albert Street, Nicholson, and Lind, you'll see that they're vacant, and some people I've talked to have said that they've been vacant for quite some time. So I'm just curious, when we have a housing crunch in all of Canada right now, how we are able to have these vacant housing units, and if they need work. Is it a maintenance issue, or is it just because we don't have anybody available to live there?
Great. So Estevan Housing Authority is actually the organization that takes care of filling those slots, but I know that the housing units that we have in Estevan are primarily for seniors and low income, generally mothers with children for the most part. We do have some units that are for disabled individuals as well. So it truly is based on needs. So it's application based. They make their applications. The board looks at them and makes a decision if they qualify for low income housing. I know that we have had some housing units, and I don't know if we call it fortunate or whatever, the need just hasn't been there as much as it has been in the past. Even for our seniors housing units that we have here in Estevan, one of the units we've actually, when I say we, the Health Authority and the Housing Authority have made an agreement to rent those units, and they've been using them for sober living. So we found a way to repurpose them and still make them usable. I don't know that any of the units are actually unusable, like if they're in disrepair, because I know that they take a very active role in ensuring that the upgrades are made on them so that when the need does arise, that we can get those seniors and young families into them.
So that was kind of my question, is if you could check into the fact, or if maybe we need to do that as a city, is check into whether or not some of these are actually just waiting for new families to come, or is there an issue with funding or repairs that are needed, because some of them, especially the ones on Lind and Albert, seem to have been sitting empty for quite some time. And we don't have a rep on the City of Estevan on that board. It'd be great if we could have a rep on that board, but currently we do not.
You're not on that board, Kirsten?
After your last visit, I was appointed as the provincial representative to the Estevan Housing Board, separate from my role as a councillor.
Yep.
But once I reviewed the job description, it is only in making appointments to the board, so my services have not been needed since the time of that appointment.
Okay, that was not my understanding of what your role would be, so I will look into that further then.
Thank you.
Absolutely.
Okay, any other members of council? Seeing none? What? Okay, go ahead, Councillor Sir.
Thank you, Worship. Thank you for coming tonight, Minister Carr. Yeah, you've kind of touched base on the questions I had: nursing home, MRI, Coffee Talk. You touched base. We talked about Perkins Street, getting some pavement there. So I just want to take this opportunity to deliver a letter for you to read at your convenience.
Our witnesses know I can't. Thank you. I'm not going to open it now.
At your convenience.
Okay, any other questions, comments? Seeing none? Oh, Councillor Ford, sorry, thank you. Yes, I see you now, go ahead.
Thank you. Thanks for coming, Minister Carr. Over the past little week, I've obviously had a little bit of a stay in the hospital, and I've kind of seen some of the shortfalls that are in our healthcare system, mostly this week with mental health. Actually, there was a lot of mental health cases came through the ward that I was in, and there were just a lot of issues that I saw kind of stemming. And I had the opportunity to speak to a couple nurses and a couple social workers, and they're still describing a lot of load on our healthcare system because of mental health, and the fact that like social workers are really hard to find. That there's a lot of social workers that they basically come to school, they go here for school, and then they leave the province. Is there any plan that the government has outside of what has already been put in the budget to kind of retain our social workers in our communities and in our province?
Yeah, within the Health Human Resource Plan, we have really lucrative incentives for individuals, especially to come out to rural Saskatchewan. I know for nurses specifically, it's $50,000. And of course, there's a return of service that we're expected them to give us for that. But for doctors, it's $200,000. So we do have some very, very nice incentives for them to come here. It really is getting, convincing those individuals that I guess Estevan is a destination for them to come to, and getting them recruited so that we can retain them. But we do have vacancies, and there just don't seem to be enough people at this point in time to fill them all. But I know that the Health Authority, through that Action Resource Plan, is just actively looking for the hard to house, hard to fill positions in communities like ours.
Okay, anything further, Councillor Ford? Okay. Okay, well, seeing no more, thank you so much, Minister Carr, for coming. We've appreciated you coming to our council meeting, and thank you so much, and good luck in the upcoming election.
Thank you.
Okay. Okay, moving forward, could we have a motion, please, to adopt the agenda as amended? Okay, Councillor Clark, seconded by Councillor Cernick. Ready for the question? All in favor? Carried. Thank you. Next, could we have a motion to accept the minutes of the previous council meeting held August 19th, please? Thank you. Councillor Cernick again, seconded by Councillor Frank. Ready for the question? All in favor? Carried. Thank you. Okay, next, under original communications, delegations, and petitions, we have from Bean Fate, Mr. Bill Mann and Sarah Yonner. Thank you so much, both of you, for coming tonight. And you'd like to talk about the Bean Fate Memorial Arena. Please turn the mic on there, Bill.
Will do, Your Worship.
Thank you.
Thank you very much for the allowance of your council to allow us to present to you today. I have also with me Danielle Lalonde Woolsey. She is our secretary for our Beanfate Memorial Rink board. She does all the scheduling for us. Sarah Yonner is our rec director hired by the town of Beanfate and does all that work for our town as well. I've sent a letter to your council for your review, and I'm sure you've probably all read it and understand why we are here. I'd like to speak to that letter a little bit and just say that we came up with this idea over the last number of years because the city of Estevan, with the demolishing of the Civic Auditorium, left the city with only the Affinity Center and the Power Dodge Center. And we see a lot of use by the minor hockey and other recreational areas of the city of Estevan coming to Beanfate. And they are primarily responsible for a lot of our funding. A lot of our revenue comes from those streams. So we thought it's only logical that in lieu of the city of Estevan undertaking a consideration for spending $10 to $15 million on another facility to meet their needs, when we have a service sitting 10 minutes away in the town of Beanfate that could be, with a little bit of an investment, upgraded quite well to meet the needs of the city. Our facility right now is not the most attractive facility to come into for all of the sports-related activities in hockey and over 30 hockey and old-timer hockey, all that kind of stuff. So we've also reached out to the RM of Coalfields, the RM of Estevan, the town of Beanfate, for their opinions onto whether this is a good idea to pursue. And those three entities have all thrown their support behind us, not without taking to their councils yet. Some of them, the town of Beanfate has approved it at their council level. The RMs of Coalfields and Estevan, the Reeves have both said that their council members are in favor. They haven't received that nod at a formal council meeting yet. I just wanted to let everybody know that although the building over the ice surface in the town of Beanfate is in, for sure, not a good state of working order. And it's not the best facility. We have upgraded the lighting in there about 8 years ago, and I was involved with that personally, helping do that. We put LED lighting in there, so we really enhanced the illumination in there. And we would continue to do that under a new one. Our ice plant went into a state of disrepair a couple of years ago, and in the fall of 2023, we had invested $200,000 into that. A bunch of it, which came from donations from supporters in the area. Tundra Oil and Gas gave us $100,000 just with a nod. The Affinity Credit Union gave us $50,000. Steel Reef, another organization in the oil field, threw us $25,000 very quickly. The RM of Coalfields threw us $5,000. We virtually went through that $200,000 repair without having to dip into our resources very much. The town of Beanfate and their council and their reserves helped us out in addressing some of these costs as they came to us. So everybody's on board with this thing. What we are proposing we would like to do is develop a relationship with the city of Estevan to utilize Beanfate, which I said like is 10 minutes or 7 minutes down the road. I can drive from Beanfate to the east side of Estevan in 7 minutes. I can't drive across the city of Estevan in any shorter time than that. So it's not very far. But I do appreciate that it's cold in our building. It's old. The dressing room facilities are somewhat inadequate. But we are wanting to put together a package that would take the same size that our lobby is, which our rink barn right now is only 100 feet wide and 200 feet long. We want to take the same facility that's over our lobby, which is 120 feet wide and 240 feet long, and we cover the whole surface. We've reached out to an engineering firm, and they've given us consideration for budgetary purposes, an estimate of $1.212 million to do that work only. That wouldn't include any other enhancements, like dressing rooms, new board improvements, or lighting, or a clock upgrade if we wanted to do a better score clock. So we really feel as a committee, as a board, that we could meet the needs of ourselves, the town of Beanfate, the city of Estevan as a third ice surface for the tune of about $2 million to $2.1 million. So we're looking to develop a relationship with the city of Estevan and for the ratepayers to say, no, you don't have to do all this work. You don't have to come dig into your pockets for all this money for the city of Estevan. You can come to us in Beanfate and for a bit of help, and we will be your third ice surface. We, as a board, we don't own the facility. The town of Beanfate owns the facility, so we are given the mandated with the care, maintenance, and operation of that facility, which we do as volunteers. We want to develop a working relationship that would give the town of Beanfate, the skating rink board, like our rink board, a contractual arrangement with minor hockey or the city of Estevan to some extent for a long period of time, so the city of Estevan wouldn't feel like they're throwing money into an assisting a neighboring community without some guarantee that it's going to be pulled in 3 years, 5 years, 10 years. We have the support of everybody in the area to say this is a good idea. It could be contractually operated and managed and entered into quite willingly with some discussion. We're not the board that would do this. The rec board wouldn't have the authority to do this. The town of Beanfate, in assistance with our board, in conjunction with the city of Estevan Council, would have the authority to do this. And everybody is willing to do that. We believe that the town of Beanfate, the skating rink in Beanfate, could meet the needs of a third ice surface for the city of Estevan. We don't want to jump in front of neighboring communities such as Lampman or Torquay and steal from them either. But we do want to work collaboratively with the city of Estevan to meet their needs, and we feel that could happen. The city of Estevan could also still, if they wanted to support other neighboring communities, I would encourage they still do that as well. I believe, or we believe, that the benefits to Beanfate are huge. If Beanfate was not considered for good use by the city of Estevan in the future, we believe that would be very detrimental to the success and the maintenance of the community of Beanfate. We all know that in communities, when they lose a major infrastructure like a skating rink, a school, a hospital, a grain elevator, all these things diminish your ability to succeed as a community. So we're really hopeful that your council would consider this in lieu of the consideration for the major facility development here in the city. We understand that the next civic election is going to have on the ballot, there's a request to have on the ballot whether the ratepayers are in favor of a third facility. Are they willing to fund that? We just wanted to throw it out here before your council is changed, that we've had this discussion. It might be a good idea to go forward, and maybe the people of the city of Estevan would consider us as a possibility when they're making that decision to decide whether they fund it entirely. We really do believe that this whole idea, with Beanfate only being, like I said, 7 minutes down the highway, is a good idea, and it just makes sense. That's what we're getting. Our feedback is from the RM of Coalfields, from the RM of Estevan, from the town of Beanfate. We believe it would be beneficial to all of us.
Okay, well, thank you very much, Bill. I totally agree. I think it's a great idea. And we'll open the floor to council. Councillor Frank?
Thanks, Your Worship. Yeah, I want to thank you for coming here and presenting. And as you mentioned, I know I missed last meeting, but Councillor Cernick brought up the idea of we need to start having some more conversation and things like that. Our minor hockey has asked us a lot about a third rink, and it's sort of been that conversation since the Civic. And so I really appreciate this timing of this is great, because then, you know, obviously there's an election coming, so a new council is going to come in, and this is going to be a conversation piece, but it's great to have multiple options on the table, and I think that's the way we can make the best decisions at all times. And the other thing that I really appreciate about this is the idea of collaboration, and that is, Minister Carr's left, but I know she would say the same.
No, she's still here nodding her head.
Oh, she's hiding behind Roberta. Sorry, thank you, Minister Carr. I know she would say the same. I know when we go to SUMA or any of those conferences, the province, the federal government usually really appreciates when they see communities working together, and so that's something I'd love to see more of too. I don't know what the official answer will be, because obviously with an election coming up, that's going to be for the future council, and I won't be here. But those who will, I surely encourage that communication at some level continue with your group to figure out how we can make sure that whether there's a third rink in Estevan and Bean Fate's the fourth, or Bean Fate's just the third, or whatever all of these various groups want to work together on, I absolutely love the willingness for collaboration. I think that is the way that we will be successful no matter what. So I really appreciate you coming today, and I hope that future councils can continue to meet with you and discuss options.
Okay, thank you. Councillor Vroba, you had your hand up.
I did. Thank you, Mr. Mann, for coming tonight. And again, I also agree with Councillor Frank. I think the fact that you're just putting that option out there, I mean, there's a lot of discussions that would have to happen before they ever decided which option to go with. But just out of curiosity, what is your current ice rental rate that you charge Estevan Minor Hockey right now?
I would have to defer that question to Sarah, our rec director.
$100 an hour right now for minor hockey.
Okay, nothing else, Councillor Vroba? Okay, Councillor Clark.
Thanks, Your Worship, and thanks for coming tonight. I appreciate that. Also, again, it's easy for me to talk because I'm not running the next time. But I think we need to appreciate that Bean Fate people spend a lot of their economic into the town of Estevan, and that we partner in one way is that we like to have you come to our community and like to have you shop here and do those things too. Certainly, I think there's a lot of valuable information there, and if the appetite is there, that'll come up to the user groups and the next council. But I do think that if there is no appetite for a new rink, I think that absolutely working there is that is the number one way to go. But because it's on the looking for information, I guess we'll wait and see that, or the next council will deal with it no matter what happens. But we do appreciate what the town of Bean Fate brings to Estevan, and it would be nice if we could work with you on this. So hopefully it works out in the future, and we'll let the next council deal with it. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Councillor Walliser.
Thank you, Your Worship. Thank you for coming tonight. I'm curious if Bean Fate's ice surface is considered a regulation size.
It's very close to regulation size. It's 85 feet wide and 190 feet long.
Thank you.
And I'm advised that that is regulation size. It's not Olympic size, but it is NHL regulation size.
I do want to mention that I think the city of Estevan can really play a role in helping your committee to see who the stakeholders are, being able to identify maybe other groups as well that could benefit from a facility like yours, thinking of our lacrosse teams, those who play broomball. There's a lot of user groups who don't feel like their needs are currently captured within the city of Estevan. Even something like figure skating or the ability to host public skates and tot skates. So I would like to see the city help bring those user groups together as the conversation moves forward.
Just in response to that, that's a very good point. We, in the past few years, have already had user groups like lacrosse and roller derby come to our facility in the summer and use it for that work or for that sport. So it is quite open to it. Figure skating hasn't been an entity in Bean Fate for a number of years now. It used to be a very viable thing. The slab and the facility is definitely usable for that. I would like to also say that our Bean Fate Minor Hockey Board is in support of having a working relationship with Estevan Minor Hockey, but that subject has not been broached between those two yet. We are the first to make this presentation, so I don't want to speak on their behalf, but I really have always firmly believed that our minor hockey can work collaboratively with Estevan Minor Hockey by some model, which has to be scrummed out, and there doesn't have to be friction or resistance to that any longer.
Absolutely, Bill. I think it's a great idea, and I think it's good that the rink is a little bit smaller than regulation. Then the slow guys can catch up with the fast guys behind the net and slow them down a bit. There's a reason for that.
Our ice is faster.
Councillor Ford's got her hand up. Go ahead, Councillor Ford. Oh, you were just scratching your head? Okay. Anyone else?
Scratching my nose, sorry.
Okay, no problem. Go ahead, Councillor Cerna.
Bill, thanks for coming in tonight. This is fantastic news, and this is kind of the biggest thing about the plebiscite is just getting the talks going, right? So I know you've mentioned that on the ballot will be decided if the city taxpayers are funding a new arena. That's 100% incorrect. So we are just gauging the opinions of a third arena. But again, this may be the way we go down the path. I love that people are talking, municipalities, RMs are gonna have to get together in the future to build infrastructure. The cities, towns cannot do it on their own anymore. Everything costs too much money. So this is fantastic. Yeah, I would like to just mention, I would like to see the ice surface upgraded as well. I know it hasn't been mentioned, but again, this is just getting the talks going. So, but again, fantastic idea, and this is what it's all about, just getting the talks going. So.
Well, I'm the guy that has put the ice into that rink for the last number of years, have kind of headed up that operation. And I know our slab is level. It doesn't got any cracks and heaves in it. It needs minor repairs, but it is in perfect condition. It was really done well back in 1986 or whatever that was when it was done. I remember as a young man, I was there watching them pour that slab in that very facility. It's a good ice surface. The boards, I didn't mention, we've recently undertaken a purchase with the Frobisher rink, which closed down, and they had received a lot of good material in a grant about 10 years before they closed that was funded by the NHL. And so they had new board material and new glass and new rubber matting. We picked that up for a steal from the town of Frobisher here over this down season and are installing it in Bean Fate. So we have a lot of that material sitting ready to enhance our work as well. Before this season goes in, we plan to upgrade our glass in the back area, which is mostly plexiglass, and turn it into hard glass, into good glass. So another thing that I didn't mention in this upgrade, what we would do on the east side of our facility with the building being bigger, we would put bleachers on that side of the building as well, so there'd be seating for fans and families, and we would heat the area in this upgrade as well. So it'd be very comfortable, and we'd put dressing rooms underneath those bleachers, so we'd go from 5 dressing rooms to probably 8 or 9 in that facility, and it would be very easy to be used for the city of Estevan for what I believe to be a very reasonable cost. I firmly believe that a little over $2 million with everybody's cooperation, and there are companies out there and other entities that will support things like this. I use as an example Thunder Oil and Gas. When they heard that we were in trouble, they just said, here, let us help. And so I believe there's that exists in all of our area, probably from the provincial government. There's probably grants from the federal government. We have our rec director pursuing those things right now as other sources of revenue for this very project. So if it all came together nicely, we may not have to throw up much money ourselves at all as ratepayers of Bean Fate and Estevan. It might all come together very nicely.
Absolutely. Okay, Bill, thank you so much, you and Sarah, for coming tonight. Thank you for your volunteerism. Volunteerism is the backbone of any community. You're one of the best volunteers in Bean Fate, bar none. Thank you for your service, and thank you again for coming tonight. Do we have a motion to accept Bill and Sarah's report? Councillor Clark, seconded by Councillor Cernick. Ready for the question? All in favor? Carried. Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Thank you. Now, you can stay, Bill. I offer this to all the people that come. None of them do, but for some strange reason, except Minister Carr, no one wants to stay, but thank you for coming anyway.
Can I interrupt for just a second?
Go ahead.
To say that I was listening to Minister Carr and all of her openings comments, talking about education, talking about health, talking about energy use in the area, and I've been involved in all of those things over my years of service. I sat on school boards, I sat on the health board in this area, and I worked for 40 years in the utility industry, so I wanted to speak to every one of the things that she was talking about.
Well, you have experience in every one. Thank you again.
Thank you.
Yeah. Okay, moving on. Under original communications, delegations, and petitions, we have from the RM of Estevan streetlight installation funding support. Now, this came up at a liaison meeting. So they, at their regular council meeting, the city or the RM of Estevan, that council approved the submission of a grant application under the Provincial Traffic Safety Fund for the installation of a streetlight at the southwest corner of the intersection of Range Road 2081 and Township Road 25 to address safety concerns with the dark intersection, and that council request a letter of support from the City of Estevan to include with the application. And we talk about collaboration. Here we are again. Let's have some more of that. So what's the wish of council? Councillor Verova, then Councillor Walliser.
Thank you, Worship. I think this is a great thing to support. I actually went by that corner. It is very dark, and so for anybody that's coming to it, I think it'd be great to have some sort of lighting there, especially, yeah.
Good,
so I would make the
that.
motion that we proceed with that for support.
Like some people would say, it's as dark as the inside of a cow. So this will be welcome.
Fortunately, I'm a city girl, so I have no idea what you're talking about.
Okay, Councillor Walliser.
I'd like to second the motion.
Okay, thank you. Any other questions or comments? Seeing none, ready for the question. All in favor? Carried. Thank you. Next, under written reports of committees, we have from the Southeast Transportation meeting, the minutes of June 25th. Could we have a motion for this, please? Councillor Clark, seconded by Councillor Walliser. Councillor Clark, then Councillor Verova. Councillor Clark, anything to say on this?
Thanks, Your Worship. I believe this is the actual, that meeting we didn't have quorum, and now we passed quorum, so I think I spoke to it last time, so
Okay.
I will just pass.
Okay, thank you. Councillor Verova.
Thank you, Worship. Councillor Clark, the next meeting you go to, can you bring up, or even if you next time on your way to the meeting, check out the stop sign from Stoughton coming towards Estevan. Just this past week, there was a family from Edmonton that came through, and they went right through the stop sign. He said he didn't even realize it till his wife mentioned, and he said it's because the stop sign seems to be in the ditch. So I told him we had a meeting coming up, and I would mention that to you to check that out. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Councillor Verova. Councillor Clark?
Thanks, Your Worship. Can I pass that on to the Minister of Highways?
Yeah. You know, thankfully she's here tonight and she's taking notes, so that's a good idea. She can help us out on that. Thank you. Okay, moving forward, under executive reports, we were asked for an emergency measures community event emergency evaluation plan at the rodeo. So Helen has gracefully put one together. I'm sure all of council has had the time to read this. Could we have a motion, please, to accept this and move it forward? Oh, yes, Councillor Ford, you'll make that motion? And thank you. You were the councillor that brought that up. So
yes, I will make that motion, and I think it's just a great idea. We have so many outdoor events in our community in the summertime, ball tournaments, sporting events, the rodeo, the fair. I think it's really important that each of our user groups kind of have, or each of our groups in the community kind of have a singular path to go forward if there's an event or an emergency. So I think this is a great plan, and I'll make the motion to approve it.
Okay, thank you for that. Have we got a seconder? Councillor Frank? Okay, ready for the question? All in favor? Carried. And it's very common sense what to do in an emergency. Okay, next, under executive reports, we have from the city clerk, the plebiscite question approval report. City clerk, would you like to say anything to that?
Thank you, Your Worship. No, I put the question together along with legal. So the actual question is, would you support the construction of a third indoor ice facility in the city of Estevan? So I'm asking for approval of council on that question.
Okay, thank you, City Clerk. That's pretty straightforward. Questions, comments from members of council? Do we have a motion to support that? Councillor Walliser.
I would like to speak against the wording, not put a motion forward in support. Again, my concern actually cuts both ways with the current wording. I think there are people that might be in support of the construction if it were through grants and fundraising. There would be people who maybe with the current wording are supportive of it because the decision's being made in a vacuum, but if they were provided a price in the question, would then be against it. So my position is unchanged from the last meeting. I would like to see more information in the question.
Okay, so I guess you don't want us to go through legal, we just want to toss it out there?
Very happy for it to go through legal. I understand that it needs to be presented in a certain way, but I would like more information provided within the question so voters feel confident what they're agreeing to or against when they cast their vote.
Yeah, see, to me, I think it's great, it's simple, it's a forward question, are you in favor, are you not? And it's a yes, no answer, so the more succinct you can be about it, the better. As far as asking for a price, in these days of supply chain issues and everything else, good luck with that. You better go high, 20 mil. If you go less, then you'll be too low. So it's very hard to pinpoint a price, as we know. Look at the Lawson Pool in Regina, $20 million over. And it's rampant. It's right across the board, cost overruns. So I would be very careful on putting out a price because you simply can't hold to that because with everything else, the way things are, you're probably not going to make it. Anyway, okay, go ahead, Councillor Roba.
Thank you, Worship. I totally understand what Councillor Walliser is saying. However, I think with this question, from my understanding, it has to be very simple. So what I think this is asking is, are the voters in favor of us even, or the next council, actually looking at a third indoor ice facility? This question actually also says in the city of Estevan. I think after hearing from Mr. Mann tonight, that also muddies the water because now we're also having other options put out there. I just think this question is a good starting point because it doesn't hold us to building a third rink. There's nothing on here saying we're going to spend $2 million, $10 million, $20 million, or head out to Beanfate. But at least it says, would you support the construction of a third indoor ice facility in the city of Estevan? So if we get back that 75% of all the voters that turned out were okay with supporting it, nothing has actually moved forward. So then it will be up to the job for the next council to move it forward. And in the event, because I know in my 8 years on council, we've had it where we have checked into the prices, and the prices have varied quite
a lot.
And even tonight with the numbers that we heard about in Beanfate, I'm cautious that those numbers would actually be able to be done in that. However, it's great if a town could do that. So I think it's good to be open. But I think with this question, it's just a good starting point. And because of the fact that we need to have this in by certain dates, today is the day. So I actually will be in favor of it. But I also support what you're saying, Councillor Walliser, in the fact that we are going to have to be diligent in making sure that we can talk to as many people as we can to inform them that this does not mean a third ice surface is going to be built. It does not mean that somebody's giving carte blanche for $20 million to be spent. It also doesn't mean that it's going to say $2 million is going to be spent somewhere else. I just think it's a good starting place because in 8 years, I've heard it from both sides of the fence, and it's hard to even decide where to go with this. So,
good point, Councillor Vroba. It's very controversial. But again, let's keep it simple. The bottom line, I mean, there's underlying implications, of course. If people would rather have Beanfate renovated, of course they'll say no. with the intention of collaborating with Bean Fate. Because, yeah, let's be honest, the other implication is if we build it, probably 95% of the funding will, and again, depending on provincial and federal grants, be coming from the City of Estevan. Any other questions, comments? Okay, so we don't have a motion to move forward with this then, I take it? Well, did you make that motion, Councillor Vroba?
I was going to let Councillor Cernick make that motion, and then I will second it if he made it.
Okay, you want to second and not make it? Okay, now we got to fight. No one
Thank you.
wants to make it.
I will make the motion.
Okay.
Again, I understand the conversations, even Billy, what he was trying to get at. And again, that's kind of way ahead of the cart.
Exactly.
So again, let's just gauge in the opinions of the voters and go from there.
Totally. Thank you. Now, Councillor Vroba, you will second it?
Thank you, Your Worship. I'd like to second that motion that Councillor Cernick just made.
Okay, thank you. Any other further questions, comments? Seeing none, ready for the question? All in favor? Opposed? Okay, let it be noted, Councillor Walliser is opposed. Okay, moving forward, under executive reports, City Clerk, elections timeline report. City Clerk, anything you'd like to say on that?
Thank you, Your Worship. No, I'm looking for 3 recommendations from council. One being they appoint me as the returning officer, and they appoint the associate returning officer as Josh Shidabe, who's our assistant city clerk. And thirdly, that they approve the advance and regular polls locations as indicated.
Okay, thank you. You've got it all identified in the report. Would you like a motion for each one?
Nope.
We can have a motion including all 3?
Yep.
Okay, so we'll be asking for a motion including all 3 of these recommendations. Number 1, appointing City Clerk Judy Pugh as returning officer for the 2024 municipal election. Number 2, appointing Josh as associate returning officer for the 2024 municipal election. And number 3, approval of established, advance, and regular poll locations that you have in the report. Could we have a motion, please, for that? Thank you. Councillor Walliser. Have we got a seconder? Okay. Councillor Cernick, thank you. Ready for the question? All in favor? Carried. Thank you. Okay, moving forward, under executive reports, we have from Land Development, DP 054-2024, 442 4th Street, over height fencing. Richard, please take it away.
Thank you, Your Worship. I guess just before we get into report here, I just wanted, after discussion with the City Clerk today, to bring something to Council's attention. As Council is aware, the Planning Development Department consists of a single individual right now, and from time to time, my work is found to be, getting into the area of conflict of interest. And I've normally, in the past, declared that in advance. I have no other individual to pass this file off to, but I did give a heads up to City Manager on this. My actions and processing this permit was performed in good faith. However, in this case, the City Clerk brought it to my attention and that after my report was submitted, that there may be a conflict of interest situation on this file due to personal interactions between other members of my family and those of the applicant. On this basis, it's requested that Council review the recommendation and determine the application in the manner that Council deems most appropriate. And with that, please advise whether you would like me to leave Council chambers.
Okay, Councillor Vroba?
No, thank you. And actually, I am the one that brought this forward, so I'm okay with you staying. Okay. Yeah, and do you want to speak on, or do you want me to speak on this right now?
Before we move forward, anyone else in council chambers against Richard staying? Seeing none, go ahead, Councillor Vroba.
Thank you, Your Worship. So my concern was the fence was being built, and it was a very nice looking fence. My concern was it seemed quite high. So with the bylaw being at 4 feet, the fence looked to me to be about 6 feet. And my concern was it was going up very nicely, and I didn't want to see the homeowner be asked to have it removed once it was put up. So with it being the 4 feet, I also noticed again across the street, there's different houses that have 6-foot fences. So I also appreciated the fact that you had written in here that it all depended on when the fence was built. And there was also extra information as to why the fence was being built to 6 feet, and it's now basically completed. I think there's maybe a couple of posts or something that he might be still working on, but again, it does have a nice look to it, so I'm not opposed to it staying at 6 feet.
Okay.
And I would make the recommendation that we allow them to keep their fence.
Okay, before you make that recommendation, did you have anything else to say, Richard?
Thank you, Your Worship.
Because I'd like to make a couple points myself. Number one, when you build a fence, you should get a permit. Then you don't have to ask, if you ask for permission, then you don't have to ask for forgiveness. Now, in this case, was a permit taken out?
In this case, as Councillor Veroba indicated, a front yard fence on an interior lot up to 4 feet in height is exempt from a permit. In the past, in the city, there were times when the front yard fence did not have a height limit attached to it. I reviewed our bylaws on that dating back to the 1980s, a few years ago when this came up. So that's why if I get a complaint about a fence, I have to talk to the landowner and then look at the fence itself and say, okay, does this look like it's been in there for 30 years or not, right? Yeah, I was asked to bring the fence into compliance, and so a letter was sent to the applicant asking them to do so. And then the applicant, who's in the gallery here right today, came to my office and explained why they wanted the fence at a higher elevation above grade. And so I have to point this out to him. There is a provision in the zoning bylaw that allows, through the development permit process, as a discretionary use, which is why it's here, for a person to ask for a fence that isn't in conformance with the 4-foot height line, or it could be the 6-foot maximum in the rear yard, or it could be a commercial or something like that. And each application of that type is evaluated on its merits. So that's why that's come to council. Now, as a discretionary use, as per policy, this was referred to every residence within a 70-meter radius of the property. I did not get any objections to the proposal. I only received one contact, and this happens regularly. Why are you building a fence on my property? And I would have to say, no, actually, if you look at your letter, it's your neighbor's building a fence, and we're just letting you know about it. And so there's 3 options for council to consider, and
okay,
there.
That's it, Richard. Thank you. Councillor Vroba, you had your hand up again. Councillor Walliser.
Yeah, I just wanted to clarify that I get a lot of that about whether or not you need a permit to build a fence. And so again, that is why I inquired about this, because it was a high fence. And so I asked the city clerk, is there a reason why we have a 6-foot fence going up on 4th Street that none of us have kind of stopped to say? Why is there a 6-foot fence? So that's kind of what is confusing, is that you don't need a building permit then to put up a fence. But then you're at risk if you go on your neighbor's property, right? Like if I build a fence and I don't get a permit, then I'm at risk for putting that fence up on my neighbor's property.
Well, even if you don't require a permit, the fence should be at most on the property line. I generally recommend to people and I get lots of inquiries about building fences. People do inquire about that. I generally tell them, my suggestion is you build it a centimeter or 2 inside your property line, because then you have control over the fence. You get to say whether your neighbor can connect to your fence and use your fence, that kind of thing. There is actually provincial legislation in Saskatchewan and in other provinces regarding, and it was generally made for agricultural lands, but saying what people's responsibilities are when you're sharing a fence on a property line.
Yeah, so I guess that was my whole inquiry, was what is the process when we see something that's being done that we know? Do we let it get built and then wait for a neighbor to complain, or do we stop and talk to the homeowner and say, hey, it's only supposed to be 4 feet, this is going up to 6 feet? And so, yeah, that was kind of basically my inquiry, and I think it did turn out to be a nice looking fence, but I also think if people don't phone ahead basically to find out what has to happen, then we are at risk of having to ask people to take it down.
Thank you.
Yeah, no, that's a fair point. And anytime you take your fence down and build a new one, you have to be wary, and that's up to the individual building the fence, that you're within your property line. Because that can cause a huge issue. Okay, any other comments? Councillor Frank, you have a comment?
Oh, sorry,
No?
Councillor Walliser was first.
Well, are we going to get into that again? Really?
Doesn't
Okay,
matter.
go
I
ahead.
was just gonna
Councillor
say-
Walliser.
Thank you, Richard. My question is more about the intention behind the bylaw. It was written in that fences should only be 4 feet in front yards. Was that something that came from policing to promote safe neighborhoods? Was that something primarily in regards to the aesthetic that we wanted to have for a walkable, friendly community? Was 4 feet arbitrary, and now we're having to back up a law that's just in place for no reason? What was the goal initially?
The 4 feet in the front yard, Councillor Walliser through Mayor Ludwig, the 4 feet in the front yard is almost a standard across the prairies, I would say. I've worked with almost 100 different municipalities in my time, and that's pretty standard. When we did the last bylaw, we just continued on with what was put into place in the 2010 bylaw. So this has been the rule for at least 14 years, possibly more. When the 2022 bylaw was reviewed, the item of fencing did come up with our referrals, and the feedback from the Estevan Police Department at that time was that they would not want fences to be higher than 6 feet because that makes it problematic for police dogs and people to scale to catch people that they're after. As everyone in council may remember here, especially if you go on the alleyway between Henry and Torgerson, there's fences there that are over 8 feet in height. And those are perfectly legal for the time that they were put in. So.
Okay, any other questions or comments from council? So you've got 3 options, and I'll ask for the motion. Number 1, council may deny approval for the overheight fence, instruct land development services to order the lowering of the fence to 4 feet above grade. Number 2, council may approve the overheight fence and apply the mitigation of privacy concerns as an appropriate criterion for the additional height. Number 3, option 2 could be considered with the addition of an agreement stating that the fence would have to be lowered to the regulated height if the property changes ownership. So what's the wish of council? Councillor Groba and then Councillor Walliser.
My motion was for option number 2, to allow the overheight fence and then have the privacy concerns dealt with by the appropriate criteria.
Okay, Councillor Walliser.
Thank you, Your Worship. I would like to second the motion.
Okay. Ready for the question? Any other questions? Seeing none. Becca, I don't see your little hand up. Okay, ready for the question? All in favor? Carried. Okay, there you go. Okay, next, under executive reports, we have from the Water Services Manager, the Water Quality Report for August. Do we have a motion of acceptance for that, please? Councillor Cernak. Have we got a second? Councillor Clark. Thank you. Any questions or comments? Seeing none. Ready for the question? All in favor? Carried. Okay, next, building report for August. Could we have a motion, please, to accept the building report for August? Councillor Cernak, seconded by Councillor Walliser. Ready for the question? All in favor? Carried. Thank you. Okay. Tonight, introduction of bylaws, we have none. Public hearings and reports, we have none. This evening, giving notice, we have the United Way request for proclamation application. So, this came to us August 30th. Applicant's name, Heidi Hesslink, Executive Director. Proclamation name, United Way Estevan Telethon. Flag name, United Way Estevan. So what's the wish of council on this? The request for a proclamation application. Councillor Clark.
I'll make that motion that we accept that.
Okay, thank you. Councillor Walliser.
I'd like to second the motion.
Okay, thank you. Ready for the question? All in favor? Carried. Thank you. Next, motions from committee. We have none tonight. Consideration of bylaws. Tonight we'll be asking for approval for bylaw 2024-2086, borrowing bylaw. Tonight we'll be asking for second and third reading and adoption for use. A bylaw of the City of Estevan to provide for borrowing the sum of $2.6 million for the purpose of Perkins Sidewalk, Leisure and City Hall, roof replacement, repair, Churchill Building with play structure and downtown underground. Do we have a motion for second reading, please? Okay, Councillor Vroba, seconded by Councillor Cernick. Now I'll ask any questions or comments at this time. Seeing none, ready for the question? All in favor? Carried. Thank you. Now I'll ask for third reading and adoption for use of bylaw 2024-2086, a bylaw in the City of Estevan to provide for borrowing the sum of $2.6 million for the purpose of Perkins Sidewalk, Leisure and City Hall roof replacement, repair, Churchill Building with play structure and downtown underground. Do we have a motion for third reading and adoption for use, please? Thank you, Councillor Clark. Seconded by Councillor Frank. Ready for the question? All in favor? Carried. Thank you. Now we'll move to inquiries. Councillor Vroba.
Thank you, Your Worship. I don't know if you remember a few years back, there was a person who built a garage in their backyard. And I believe the reason we didn't allow them access to that backyard is because they had to drive over top of the curb into that garage, and it was wrecking the curb, right?
Well, plus, and unfortunately, we've had a few cases where people did not take out the building permit. Again, they were going to ask for forgiveness instead of permission, built a garage that was far too large. Then what do? It was built when it came to our attention.
Yeah,
but
no,
this is a little bit different. There was no curb to
right,
go.
my question was the driving over the curb. And I guess the reason I'm asking is because I notice quite often lately we have a lot of vehicles being parked just in the middle of a yard. Sometimes multiple vehicles are being parked in the middle of a yard. And so I'm questioning why was that something, again, I'm just throwing that one incident out there. But is that something, because I can't find it in any of our bylaws, that states you can't drive over a curb to park your vehicle on your own driveway, or not even driveway, in your own lawn. But it's not aesthetically pleasing when you have neighbors and you have 6 vehicles parked in the middle of a yard. So I just was curious if there's something, and because Richard was here tonight, if there was something that
yeah, and Richard, we can let Richard respond to that if you want, Richard. Normally what we would do, if it happened for whatever reason, that the curb was not cut, we would get the curb cut so you could have proper access into your garage, and that would probably have to be paid by the homeowner, right, since in that case they probably didn't get the permit, I'm guessing.
Well,
go ahead, Richard.
Yeah, for this, what I'm saying though is there's no permit. They're literally just driving over the curb, driving over the sidewalk. And
to get onto their lawn.
To park on their lawn. And a lot of people in the neighborhoods, because it's happening in more than one neighborhood, are saying why? Why is the city allowing people to just use up their whole entire front yard to park vehicles?
Okay, thank you. Go ahead, Richard, please.
Thank you, Your Worship and Council. Yes, this matter came up when we were doing the final review on the 2022 zoning bylaw, and then after that we had a question come up from city manager about a different place where the entire front yard was gravelled with fine gravel, not zero scale, but fine gravel, so you can just park wherever you want. Currently, that is not governed under zoning bylaw. The engineering department does have policies in place for standards for the curbing and what have you, but it's a policy, it's not a bylaw per se. It's definitely something that could be converted into a bylaw if need be. We do have it in the zoning bylaw now that if you put up a garage and the front doors are facing a curb that isn't rolled down already for vehicle traffic, that in order to get that garage permit, they also have to receive approval from city engineering to do something with a curb. But we don't have, to my knowledge, definitely nothing in my department saying that there's a maximum percentage of your frontage that can be used for driveways. Like that's a hard and fast rule. It's more of an operation policy.
I think that's where I'm thinking we have a gap somewhere, because we're saying to people, if you spend the money and put up a garage, we're not going to let you park in it unless you spend the money to fix the curb. But if you just ramp the curb and bust it all up, we're going to let you park in the middle of your driveway. So I just think that's something we need to maybe pay attention to and look at. So.
I think something, Councillor Brober, this is something you could campaign on and make positive change within the city. You might want to use that.
I am the co-chair for the Safe Community Wellbeing Plan.
See, there you go.
So this is something we could look at.
Good idea.
Yeah, I just think if we allow neighborhoods to start doing that all over the place, we're going down a
good point. It's like the
slippery
car
lane.
with the broken window. Next day it's got a broken headlight. Next day hood's gone, tire's gone. I hear what you're saying.
You speak from experience.
Go ahead, Councillor Clark.
Thanks, Your Worship. Just an inquiry to the city manager. Mooseman has got quite a bit of boost on their housing accelerator program. Is that something that the city of Estevan could look into? And I guess if I thought of a place that we needed would be more for the infill housing, where there are some empty lots within the community, that it would be nice to say, here's a grant for you to rebuild in town. It could be expanded beyond that, but just wondering, is it something that's out there that we have access to?
Thank you, Councillor Clark. To talk to that, yeah, some of our current economic development incentives are mainly targeted at commercial businesses. We have in the past, when there was the Can Do program, gave construction incentives for new housing. After the oil boom, there has been significant residential properties available, so it was never on our priority list to look at accelerator programs, but I think as we move into the next council, we could definitely bring it up with the Economic Development Board to look at incentives for those infill or even some new construction on residential. So it's definitely something on my radar since the Mooseman incentive came up. We've had some questions, so it'll likely be going to the Economic Development Board to review first and then come to the new council.
Thank you.
And that money, Councillor Clark, that Mooseman's using is federal grants. That's what they're using for that support. That's coming from the federal government. Okay. Councillor Walliser.
Thank you, Your Worship. I have heard nothing but positive feedback about the play park programming as well as the pools this summer. Despite a few days that required closures, people really felt that there was value in getting to know their neighbors and being able to have a shared spot to bring the kids to. The one complaint that seemed to run through all the parks was that it doesn't necessarily reflect the needs of families today. So as a child 30 years ago, I could go to the play park with a parent and do the activities because my mom was a teacher and had the summers off. Now that many families have both parents working during the work week, they're really feeling like they're not able to access the programming because there's no crafts in the evenings, there's not a lot of swimming on the weekends. So if we really want to use these sites, specifically Churchill, as that community touch point, the ability to bring people together, lots of people asking, how can we move staff to shift the programming to where families can use it the most?
Okay, that's a good point, and perhaps on the new council, it's something that, could be worked toward. And thank you for your input on Churchill. I mean, that's now our prize within the city. That's finally done, and that's something that we can all be proud of. That is a beautiful park. So I think for the most part, City Manager, that's done, right?
Yes, thank you, Your Worship. Councilor Walliser. We have heard the same concerns, and Facebook is very loud on not being open on the weekends. I know there is staffing concerns. We do need full lifeguarding for the pool, especially at Churchill. So it has been brought up to Leisure Services Manager Aaron Wilson. So we'll definitely look for more employees over the summer next year so we can potentially provide that service. So we'll definitely look into it.
Yeah, unfortunately, this year it was an issue getting our full slate of summer students. I don't know what to say about that. Their parents must be letting them stay at home for nothing. I don't know.
Just to speak to that, Your Worship, we have talked to QP and some other cities, and they are having trouble finding summer students all over the province. So I don't know if it's a change in what sports are happening and what the kids are doing, or just not unwilling to work, or other than that, but we aren't the only city that's having issues finding summer students.
Okay, for sure. Okay, Councillor Cernick.
Thank you, Worship. Yeah. I had many inquiries about the downtown, which kind of got answered, but the one was about the traffic lights, about utilizing the old traffic lights at 12th Avenue and 4th Street. Just wondering if we had any thoughts on that.
Thank you, Councillor Shinnick. Yes, we did look at that as an option. Because those were some of our traffic lights that actually had SAS Power light poles on them, there is an issue with the electrical and getting approval from SAS Power on what those are. So as we move forward, we did reduce the costing of those traffic lights right now, but I have been assured that as the electrical goes in this week, that there will still be bases in electrical for light standards, and we can definitely look at options as we move forward. But unfortunately from our contractors, it was deemed that those existing poles were in pretty bad shape and did have SAS Power bulbs on top.
Yeah, that's the issue. With all of the undergrounds, we will have the electrical. So moving forward, we'll have the ability to go back to lights if the new council wants that, Councillor Cernick. And I'm remiss, yes, if you don't mind, Councillor Frank, I missed you, Councillor Ford. You're so quiet back there. Please go ahead.
Thanks, Your Worship. I have some great news as of this afternoon. Our Innovation Conference for Economic Development that is starting tomorrow through Thursday is officially sold out. So thank you to the province, thank you to the community, thank you to everybody for supporting this. It's going to be a great 3 days of conference. Our dinner is also officially sold out with John Gorman and Jeff Sanquist. So we're just really looking forward to having that network experience and to being able to learn a lot and to have all these new people come into our community and see what we have to offer.
Absolutely, and thank you, Councillor Ford, as chair. I know you've been laid up lately, but you've helped out a lot. So thank you for your assistance, sir.
Councillor Frank. We'll be back dancing, so we'll be good.
Right on. Okay, thank you. Councillor Frank.
Well, Your Worship, I just had one for you this evening, which is actually, I believe, unless you've changed your plans to run or you've changed your vacation plans, I believe this is the final night that you're going to be sitting in that chair after many, many years. So as I was sitting here this evening, I wanted to make sure that we gave you a really big thank you, with partisan opinions aside, of anything that's gone on. 30 years serving your community is astounding. I think we can all be very inspired by your many years of dedication to the community, to working hard. This is basically a volunteer job, regardless of the stipend we get. The work is significant, and the abuse and all the fun and all
it's also significant.
It's also significant, and I'm sure I've given it to you many times over the years, and so have many others. But on behalf of the 9 councils that you've worked with and everybody else, I wouldn't want you to get out of that chair without knowing that we're very grateful for your commitment to the community. So,
well, thank you so much. Appreciate that. Thank you, guys. It's truly been a privilege, and you know, the 30 years have gone quickly. I've been able to work with many great people. It's been a great experience, and it probably is time after 30 years to take a bit of a powder, but I really have enjoyed it, and I'd like to thank this council and the 8 previous councils that I've had the privilege to work with, all of the volunteers, all of the things. I mean, we just had a list here. It's probably too many to go over. One thing I really did enjoy was chairman of Affinity Place, which opened in April of 11. And then all of the great activities that we had in our community, the Craft Celebration Tour, TSN, Canada Cup, Summer Games, the Sasktel Tankard. the Canada Cup Curling, Centennial Cup, Western Canadian Baseball Championships, which were just on lately, Viterra Scotties, Sasktel Tankard in 23, and all of the great concerts that we've been able to have. Hopefully we can get back to having good ones again. The Biosolids building, which was a great addition with Magna Engineering, which was another concept with engineering to help get away from the mechanical, which I think will be a lot cheaper for us in the long run. 15, airport runway rehabilitation, the fire hall in 17. The rehabilitation program we got in with the sidewalks every year. The citywide water main, roadway rehabilitation that we do now every year. The completion of the Rafferty pipeline in 20 was huge, 14 kilometers for new water on Rafferty, because we couldn't treat anymore with ultraviolet with 2,000 geese above the water intake, and I won't get into that, but that was a great thing. All of the splash pads that we had, Padwick, Royal Heights, Centennial, the water tower rehabilitation, that was great. Pillow bouncer, and we thank Mr. Biggs for that. The Westview outdoor warm-up building, the Churchill pool, as we talked about, fantastic. Wastewater pilot project that we talked about a bit with Magna. The downtown revitalization is the last big project that I will be involved with. Although there's a fair bit of criticism, I think when we're all done, it will be fantastic. So again, I'd like to thank everyone on council, all of the people I've worked with over the years. It's been great. So with that, City Manager?
Nothing to add, Your Worship.
Okay. City Clerk?
I do have something to add.
Okay, go ahead.
I just want to redirect that Election Day is November 13th, 2024. Nomination packages are available tomorrow morning, starting at the City Clerk's office. If anybody has any questions, please come and see us or go to elections@estevan.ca. Check out all the information. And nomination day is October 9th, 4 o'clock. So anybody willing to run, please contact us and we'll set you up.
Okay, thank you, City Clerk. And please get involved in your community and run. And please vote. Vote once, vote often, but vote. It's very important. Use your vote. Trudy, anything?
Nothing.
Okay, do we have a motion to move into committee? Okay, Councillor Serlik, seconded by Councillor Frike. All in favor? Thank you. We stand adjourned. Thank you.
If you'd like to share your feedback on the program you just watched, contact us today